The massive research station hung in space like a silver jewel against the dark backdrop of stars. It slowly turned around the blue and green planet below, its metal walls gleaming under the light of the distant sun. Inside the station, hundreds of alien scientists worked day and night to study the strangest creatures from across the galaxy. Dr. Zix Thara moved through the main laboratory with graceful steps, her four thin arms checking different computer screens as she walked. Her blue skin was almost see-through, and tiny lights flickered under the surface like fireflies trapped in glass. She had spent 30 years studying alien life forms, and she was proud to be the head scientist of the most important research. Stationed in known space, the laboratory was huge, with tall ceilings that stretched up into darkness. Glass containers lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each one holding a different creature from a distant world. Some containers glowed with soft purple light, others buzzed with electricity, and a few seemed to bend space around them in ways that hurt to look at. Each container had a small metal plate that showed the name of the creature inside and which planet it came from. Korth stood near the entrance, his massive body blocking most of the doorway. His skin looked like gray stone, rough and hard, with deep cracks that ran across his face and arms. He was 8 feet tall and almost as wide, but he moved with surprising care around the delicate equipment. As head of security, it was his job to make sure nothing dangerous escaped from the containers. In 20 years of work, nothing had ever gotten past him. Near the center of the room, Piptel sat at a small desk that was just the right size for her tiny body. She looked like a cross between a grasshopper and a fairy, with long thin legs and wings that sparkled in the light. Her large black eyes could see things that other creatures missed, and her brain worked faster than most computers. She studied how different creatures behaved, trying to understand why they did the things they did. The three scientists worked well together, even though they came from very different worlds. Dr. Zix Thara used her knowledge to plan experiments. Korth kept everyone safe, and Piptel figured out what made each creature tick. They had successfully captured and studied over 5,000 different species, and their research had helped make peace between dozens of alien races. Today felt different, though. Dr. Zix Thara could sense excitement in the air as she waited for the collection team to return from their latest mission. They had gone to a small blue planet called Earth, way out on the edge of the galaxy. Most scientists thought Earth was boring because it only had one intelligent species, but Dr. Zix Thara wanted to study its simpler life forms. The collection team was supposed to bring back something called insects. According to their research, these were tiny creatures that flew around and did simple tasks like finding food and making more insects. It seemed like an easy job for a team that had captured creatures capable of traveling through time and eating entire stars. A soft beep came from the communication system, and Dr. Zix Thara pressed a button on her desk. Captain Vortok's voice filled the room, but he sounded tired and frustrated instead of proud like usual. Dr. Zix Thara, we are returning to the station now, the captain said. We have one specimen from Earth. Excellent, Dr. Zix Thara replied. How many different types did you collect? There was a long pause before the captain answered. Just one. One single creature. It took us 3 hours to catch it. Dr. Zix Thara looked confused. 3 hours to catch one tiny Earth creature. The same team had once captured a living storm cloud in under 10 minutes. Something was very wrong. What kind of equipment did you need to use? She asked. Everything, came the tired reply. Molecular disruptors, quantum nets, gravity fields, and temporal locks. We finally got it when we surrounded the entire building with an energy dome. Korth and Piptel stopped their work and listened carefully. They had never heard the collection team sound so defeated after a simple mission. When the collection ship docked with the station an hour later, the three scientists went to meet it. Captain Vortak stepped out first, followed by his team of 5 specialists. They all looked like they had been through a battle. Their uniforms were torn, their equipment was damaged, and they moved like soldiers returning from a war. "Where is the specimen?" Dr. Zixthara asked. Captain Vortak held up a small container that glowed with blue energy. Inside the container, barely visible, was a tiny black speck. "This is it," he said. "One earth insect called a housefly." The 3 scientists stared at the container in disbelief. The tiny creature inside was smaller than Piptel's fingernail, and it looked completely ordinary. It had 2 thin wings, 6 legs, and large eyes that took up most of its head. There was nothing special about it at all. "You needed 3 hours and all that equipment to catch this?" Korth asked. Captain Vortak nodded slowly. "It kept disappearing just when we thought we had it. It seemed to know exactly where our nets would be before we threw them. It flew through spaces that our computers said were too small for any matter to pass through. It avoided our energy fields, like it could see them coming from miles away." Dr. Zixthara took the container and studied the tiny creature inside. The fly sat perfectly still, cleaning its front legs with movements too fast to follow. It looked up at her with its large black eyes, and for a moment she felt like it was studying her back. "Put it in Containment Unit 7, she ordered. "Use the same settings we use for creatures that can bend reality." Containment Unit 7 was their most secure container. It used 6 different types of energy fields, gravity manipulation, and temporal locks to keep dangerous creatures from escaping. Nothing had ever broken out of Unit 7. As they moved the tiny fly to its new home, Dr. Zixthara felt a strange worry in the back of her mind. Something about this simple Earth creature made her nervous, though she could not explain why. It was just a fly after all. What could possibly go wrong? The alarm started screaming at exactly 3 in the morning. Station time? Dr. Zixthara jumped out of her bed and ran to the laboratory as fast as her 4 legs could carry her. The red warning lights flashed in the hallways, and her heart pounded with fear. Only the most dangerous emergencies triggered the main alarm system. She burst through the laboratory doors and found Korth standing in front of Containment Unit 7 with his mouth hanging open. The unit was still running perfectly, all 6 energy fields glowing bright blue, but the container inside was completely empty. The tiny Earth fly was nowhere to be seen. "How is this possible?" Dr. Zixthara whispered, staring at the empty space where the fly should have been. Korth shook his massive head. "I checked the unit 10 minutes ago, and everything was normal. I went to get some coffee, and when I came back, the alarm was going off." Piptel flew into the room on her sparkly wings, her large eyes wide with panic. "The security cameras caught everything," she said in her high voice. "You need to see this right now." They gathered around the main computer screen as Piptel played back the security footage. The video showed the containment unit working normally, with the fly sitting quietly inside. Then, in the space of just 2 seconds, something impossible happened. The fly simply walked through the energy barriers, like they were not even there. "Play it again," Dr. Zixthara ordered. Not believing what she had seen, they watched the video 5 more times, but it always showed the same thing. The fly approached the energy barrier, paused for a moment, then walked right through it. The barrier did not flicker or fail. The fly just passed through solid energy like it was made of air. "Our computers say this is impossible," Piptel said, pointing at the data on her screen. "The energy barriers create a wall that no known matter can pass through. Even creatures from other dimensions cannot break through these fields." Korth was already moving toward the door. Where did it go after? It escaped? Piptel pulled up more camera footage from around the station. They watched the tiny fly zoom through the corridors at incredible speed, making turns that should have broken every bone in its body. It flew upside down, sideways, and in perfect circles without ever slowing down. "Look at this," Piptel said, pointing at the screen. "It is flying at over 60 miles per hour, but it can stop and change direction instantly. Our best flying machines cannot do that." Dr. Zixthara felt her skin turn a deeper shade of blue, which happened when she was very worried. This tiny creature was making a fool of their most advanced technology. If word got out that they could not contain a simple Earth insect, their reputation would be ruined forever. "We need to catch it before anyone else finds out," she said. "Use everything we have." For the next 6 hours, the three scientists turned the research station upside down trying to catch one small fly. Korth set up gravity traps in every corridor, creating invisible walls of force that should have stopped any flying creature. The fly zipped right through them like they were not there. Dr. Zixthara deployed electromagnetic nets that could catch creatures made of pure energy. The fly seemed to sense them coming and changed direction at the last second, leaving the nets. To catch nothing but empty air, Piptel tried to communicate with the fly using every language in the galactic database. She made clicking sounds, flashed colored lights, and even released different scents that were supposed to mean, "Please stop flying around." The fly completely ignored her. They brought in the station's most advanced robot hunters, machines designed to track down escaped prisoners. The robots could see in every spectrum of light, hear sounds from miles away, and move faster than lightning. The fly made them look like they were standing still. "Try the temporal displacement nets," Dr. Zixthara ordered, getting desperate. The temporal nets were their most powerful weapons, capable of freezing time itself in a small area. They fired the nets at the fly from 6 different directions at once. The fly somehow sensed what was coming and performed a barrel roll that took it safely between all 6 nets. By noon, the fly had crashed into 17 different computer systems, shorted out the main communication array, and somehow triggered the fire suppression system in the dining hall. It seemed to be everywhere at once, causing problems faster than they could fix them. Dr. Zixthara collapsed into her chair, exhausted and defeated. Her 4 arms hung limply at her sides, and her blue skin had turned almost gray with stress. In 30 years of scientific work, she had never encountered anything like this tiny Earth creature. "It is playing with us," Korth said, watching the fly zoom past the window for the 10th time that hour. "It could have left the station through the air vents, but it is staying here just to make us look stupid." The situation got much worse when Station Administrator Flux Marina arrived. She was a tall, blue-skinned Aquarian with silver gills on her neck and no patience for failure. Her job was to make sure the research station ran smoothly and efficiently. Right now, it was doing neither. "Dr. Zixthara," Flux Marina said in a voice as cold as space ice, "I understand you have lost control of a research specimen." "It is just a temporary setback," Dr. Zixthara replied, trying to sound confident. "We will have it contained within hours." Flux Marina looked around the laboratory, taking in the damaged equipment, the exhausted scientists, and the tiny fly that chose that exact moment to zoom between them and land on her desk. "This creature has disrupted station operations for 8 hours, she said, not taking her eyes off the fly. "It has damaged critical systems and made our security team look like amateurs. You have 40 hours to solve this problem, or I will jettison this entire section of the station into space." The fly cleaned its tiny legs and flew away, leaving Dr. Zixthara staring at the spot where it had been. 40 hours to catch something that had already beaten their best technology. She began to wonder if they needed to try a completely different approach, but what could possibly work when science had failed? Jake's laughter filled the laboratory for almost a full minute, while 37 of the galaxy's smartest scientists stared at him in complete silence. Dr. Zixthara felt her blue skin turn darker with embarrassment. Here she was, asking this primitive human for help, and he was laughing at their efforts. "I am sorry," Jake said, wiping tears from his eyes. "I don't mean to be rude, but watching you folks chase that fly is like watching rocket scientists try to catch a baseball with a nuclear reactor." Dr. Zixthara did not understand what a baseball or nuclear reactor was, but she could tell Jake was not being mean. His laugh was friendly, not mocking, like someone who had just seen something that reminded him of a funny memory. "Mr. Morrison," she said carefully, "this creature has defeated our most advanced technology. It passes through energy barriers like they do not exist and flies in ways that violate the basic laws of physics." Jake nodded and watched the fly zoom past his head. Yeah, flies are pretty good at avoiding things. They have to be, or they would all get eaten by spiders and birds back on Earth. Korth stepped forward, his stone-like face showing confusion. "Are you saying this creature's abilities are normal for your planet?" "Oh, sure," Jake replied. "Flies are annoying little things, but they are not magic or anything. They just have really good reflexes and can see movement faster than most other creatures." Pip Tell flew up to Jake's eye level, her wings buzzing with excitement. "But how does it pass through our containment fields? Our computers calculate that it should be impossible." Jake scratched his head and looked at the empty containment unit. "Well, I am not a scientist, but I am guessing your energy barriers work kind of like invisible walls, right?" "Exactly," Dr. Zixthara said. "They create a solid barrier that no matter can penetrate. But flies are really small," Jake said. "Maybe. Your barriers have tiny gaps that are too small for your computers to detect, but just big enough for a fly to squeeze through." The three alien scientists looked at each other with surprise. In all their complex calculations and theories, none of them had considered something so simple. They had been thinking of the fly as a mysterious creature with supernatural powers, when it was really just very small and very good at finding tiny openings. "Even if that were true," Dr. Zixthara said, "we still cannot catch it. Look at how fast it moves and how quickly it changes direction." Jake watched the fly for a few more minutes, following it with his eyes as it zipped around the laboratory. The alien scientists continued their frantic efforts to catch it, running around with nets and scanners and complicated devices that beeped and flashed with colored lights. "You know," Jake said quietly, "you folks are making this way harder than it needs to be." "What do you mean?" Pip Tell asked. Jake pointed at the fly, which had just landed on top of a computer screen. "See how it keeps landing on your equipment? And look, it is hovering around those air vents where the warm air comes out. It is not just flying around randomly. It is looking for something." Dr. Zixthara followed his gaze and realized he was right. The fly did seem to have favorite spots where it liked to land. It spent a lot of time near the food synthesizers and kept returning to the same warm areas of the laboratory. "What is it looking for?" she asked. Jake smiled. "Same thing every living creature looks for: food, water, and a comfortable place to rest. That fly has been flying around for over a day now. It must be getting pretty hungry and tired." The idea was so simple that Dr. Zixthara felt embarrassed for not thinking of it herself. They had been treating the fly like some kind of interdimensional warrior, when it was really just a small, hungry animal trying to survive in a strange place. "So how do we use that information to catch it?" Korth asked. Jake looked around the laboratory. "Do you have any sugar?" Dr. Zixthara blinked all four of her eyes. "Sugar? Yeah, you know, sweet stuff. Flies love sugar. Back home, if you want. To catch flies, you put out something sweet and wait for them to come to you. Pip-Tell quickly flew to a computer terminal and searched the station's food database. We have sugar cubes in the dining hall for species that require sweetened beverages. Perfect, Jake said. Can you get me a few of those, and maybe some small dishes to put them in? While Pip-Tell went to get the supplies, Jake continued watching the fly. The alien scientists had stopped their chase and were listening to every word he said. They could not believe that the solution to their problem might be something as simple as sugar. You see, Jake explained, the problem with trying to catch something is that you are always one step behind it. The fly sees you coming and moves away, but if you let the fly come to you, then you don't have to be faster than it. You just have to be patient. Pip-Tell returned with a container of sugar cubes and several small dishes from the dining hall. Jake took them and dissolved 3 sugar cubes in some water, making a sweet syrup. He poured the syrup into the small dishes and placed them around the laboratory. Now what? Dr. Zixthara asked. Now we wait, Jake said, sitting down in a chair. The fly will smell the sugar and come to investigate. When it lands on one of the dishes to eat, that is when we catch it. The alien scientists looked skeptical. After all their advanced technology had failed, it seemed impossible that sugar water could succeed. But they had run out of other options. So they decided to try Jake's simple plan. They did not have to wait long. Within 5 minutes, the fly stopped its random flying and began circling one of the sugar dishes. It landed on the edge of the dish and extended a tiny tube from its mouth to taste the sweet liquid. Jake slowly reached into his tool bag and pulled out a clear plastic container and a piece of paper. Moving very carefully, he placed the container over the fly and slid the paper underneath. The fly was trapped. The entire laboratory fell silent. 37 brilliant alien scientists stared at Jake holding up the container with the fly safely inside. After more than 30 hours of failure, a human had solved their problem in less than 10 minutes using materials that cost almost nothing. The silence in the laboratory stretched on for what felt like hours, though it was probably only 30 seconds. Dr. Zixthara stared at the clear container in Jake's hands, watching the tiny fly inside clean its legs as if nothing important had happened. Her forearms trembled slightly as her brain tried to process what she had just witnessed. How? She whispered, her voice barely loud enough for anyone to hear. Jake looked around at all the shocked faces staring at him. Well, like I said, the fly was just hungry. Once it found food, it stopped flying around and focused on eating. That made it easy to catch. Korth's stone-like face showed more emotion than anyone had ever seen from him before. His mouth hung open, and his small eyes were wide with disbelief. But we tried everything, he said slowly. Gravity traps, energy nets, temporal displacement fields. How could sugar water work when all of that failed? Jake set the container down gently on a nearby table and looked at the massive alien security chief with a kind smile. Sometimes the best solutions are the simple ones. You are trying to catch the fly by being smarter and faster than it. But you didn't need to outsmart it. You just needed to understand what it wanted. Dr. Zixthara felt something she had never experienced before in her 30 years as a scientist. She felt humble. Here was a creature she had studied for barely 2 days, and this human understood it better than she did after all her research and analysis. Explain it to me, she said, sitting down in the chair across from Jake. Help me understand how we got this so wrong. Jake leaned back and thought for a moment before speaking. You folks are incredibly smart. Your technology is amazing, and your scientific methods are way more advanced than anything we have back on Earth. But sometimes being too smart can be a problem. Pip-Tell flew over and landed on the table next to the container, staring at the fly with new respect. What do you mean? Well, Jake said, You assumed that because the fly could escape from your advanced containment system, it must have advanced abilities, so you tried to catch it using advanced methods. But flies aren't advanced. They are simple creatures that do simple things for simple reasons. Dr. Zixtara nodded slowly as she began to understand. We overcomplicated the problem. Exactly, Jake said. Back home, we have a saying. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. It means that the most obvious explanation is usually the right one. Korth scratched his rocky head with one massive finger. So when the fly escaped through our energy barriers, we should have assumed it found a small gap, not that it had magical powers. Right, Jake said. And when it kept avoiding your traps, you should have thought about why any animal avoids danger, not assumed it could predict the future. Dr. Zixtara felt a mix of embarrassment and excitement. Embarrassed because she had made such a basic mistake, but excited because she was learning something completely new about how to approach problems. Show us more, she said eagerly. What other simple solutions do humans use? Jake grinned and reached into his tool bag. He pulled out a small roll of yellow tape that was sticky on one side. This is called fly tape. You hang it up and flies get stuck to it when they land on it. Works great in places where you have a lot of flies. He also showed them a simple device made of plastic and wire mesh. This is a fly swatter. You use it to hit flies when they land on things. Takes good timing, but it works. Piptel examined the fly swatter with fascination. This is so simple, but so clever. It is designed specifically for the way flies behave. That is the key, Jake said. If you want to catch something, you have to think like that something. What does it want? What does it fear? How does it move? Once you understand those things, the solution usually becomes obvious. Dr. Zixtara stood up and began pacing around the laboratory, her mind racing with new ideas. We have been approaching every research problem the same way. We use our most advanced technology first and assume that more complexity means better results. Sometimes that is true, Jake said. But sometimes the best tool for the job is the simplest one. On Earth, we use hammers to drive nails, not laser systems or gravity manipulators. The conversation was interrupted when Administrator Flux Marina entered the laboratory. She looked around at the group of scientists sitting calmly instead of running around in panic, and her expression showed confusion. Dr. Zixtara, she said in her cold voice, what is the status of the containment breach? Dr. Zixtara smiled for the first time in 2 days and pointed at the container on the table. The specimen has been successfully recaptured. The situation is resolved. Flux Marina walked over and stared at the tiny fly in the simple plastic container. How did you manage to catch it when your advanced systems failed? We learned something important about the value of simple solutions, Dr. Zixtara replied. This human showed us that sometimes the best approach is not the most complex one. Flux Marina looked at Jake with new interest. You are the maintenance engineer from mining platform Delta 7? Yes, ma'am, Jake said, standing up politely. Dr. Zixtara, Flux Marina said, I want you to offer this human a position on our research staff. We need someone who can think differently than the rest of us. Dr. Zixtara's skin brightened to a happy shade of blue. Mr. Morrison, would you be interested in becoming our consultant for practical solutions? The pay would be much better than maintenance work, and you would be helping us study creatures from across the galaxy. Jake thought about the offer for a moment. He thought about his family's farm back on Earth and the debts they needed to pay. He thought about how amazing it would be to work with the smartest scientists in the galaxy. Most of all, he thought about how good it felt to help solve a problem that had seemed impossible. I accept, he said with a big smile. 6 months later, the research station had a new wing dedicated to human practical sciences. Scientists from across the galaxy came to learn simple, effective solutions to complex problems. Jake taught classes on basic problem solving, and his methods were being used on hundreds of worlds. The fly lived happily in a simple glass terrarium with sugar water, proper food, and good ventilation. It was probably the most comfortable research specimen in the known universe, and it had taught the galaxy's greatest minds that sometimes the best wisdom comes from the simplest places.